We're getting closer to Sagittarius season.
Ever closer.
You know what that means.
Do I?
Do you?
No, I don't.
I was hoping you did.
No.
Because I don't. I'm Erin.
I'm Tom.
This is Baby's First Watch List, the podcast that is not jumping right to Christmas season after Halloween.
No.
We're making it Thanksgiving time, friends.
It's comfort food season.
That's right. And we are sticking to it, even though we went to Target yesterday just so I can have our son walk through the Christmas tree aisle.
Yeah.
So, you know. And we're playing Christmas music too.
That's a strong we. But okay.
He likes it. All right. So today's movie is 1985's Tampopo, as I'm sure all of you have seen.
Yes. And if not, you will see after this.
I had not heard of this movie until Tom suggested it last week or 2 weeks ago.
I had heard of it just through it being a really good food movie.
Mm-hmm. It is a Japanese comedy film written and directed by Juzo Itami, who actually directed his first film titled The Funeral at age 50.
Wow.
Isn't
So
that
he was
crazy?
really old when this came out.
Mm-hmm. He ended up having like a really crazy death, which is really sad.
Okay.
Did you read about this?
No, I didn't.
So he had fallen from his apartment and died, and they found a note on typed up saying that there was something was going to be revealed in the press, but it wasn't true and whatever. And then it was revealed in the press, but his family said that was not what happened, and that he was being kind of followed by this gang that he had made a movie about in years previous.
Wow.
And that this was a setup to show that his death was maybe one way, but really it was a different way. And a former member of that gang came out and said that that's true.
Wow.
But who knows if that person was telling
Right.
the truth, but crazy,
Yeah.
right? Very sad, very sad. The movie, and there was an incident where members of that group had attacked him previously. So who knows?
It wouldn't be out of the question.
Right. So the movie stars Tsutomu Yamazaki, who worked a lot with this director. This director ended up he worked a lot with the same people.
Yeah.
Nobuko Miyamoto, who was his wife.
I did not know that
Tampopo.
until I looked after.
Yep. And she also starred in most of his movies.
Yeah.
Which I kind of love that. Like, if you became a famous director, I would want to star in all your movies. Come on. Koji Yakusho, who was from Babel.
I was going to say, you know what you know
He
him
was
from?
the dad in Babel.
He was the dad in Babel.
Which was not my favorite movie. You liked it more than I did.
I got it. Like, I appreciated it.
Just,
I wouldn't necessarily rewatch it.
I don't love that director very much. It
Yeah.
just is
Not a
what
big
it is.
Revenant head.
I'm not. I'm really not. And Birdman, I didn't like as much the second time
Yeah,
around.
neither did I, actually.
And of course, it also stars Ken Watanabe,
Yes.
who is a Best Supporting Actor nominee from The Last Samurai. He was in Batman Begins. He was in Inception.
He's a Nolan guy.
Yeah. He was in Memoirs of a Geisha. He was in Letters from Iwo Jima. He got a lot of praise for that movie. And he also was in Detective Pikachu. Watanabe also is a Tony-nominated actor for his Broadway debut in The King and I.
Wow. When was that?
2015.
Wow.
Not that long ago. So yeah, he's a great actor.
I like him. He always adds to the movie. Whenever he's in it, you're always like, I like that guy.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't believe that the guy from Babel, he played the guy in the white suit.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
the gangster guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So Tampopo was released in late November 1985. So we picked a good time to review it because it was same time of the year it came out. And it was a success. I don't know as far as how much money it made.
Yeah, it's tough to find.
There was not a lot of stuff about this movie on Wikipedia.
No.
It currently has a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, though. And it received the Best Editing and Best Sound trophies at the Japanese Academy Awards. And this director, a lot of his movies were big at the Japanese Academy Awards. A lot of his movies won a lot of those awards. And it was also nominated for Best Foreign Film at the Independent Spirit Awards.
That makes sense.
Didn't quite make it over to the Oscars or the Golden Globes, but,
Yeah.
That's okay.
There's a ton of great Japanese, not only Japanese, there's a ton of great foreign films that don't ever break in that you kind of gotta find.
Seek out.
This one is just like this one. I wouldn't say is like an obscure one because this one, if you look up food movies, it's on every single list.
Right.
So it's not like one where it's like, oh my god, no one's ever seen Tampopo, but like, it's not exactly a
Very popular movie
Parasite.
in the United States, right?
from South Korea.
So this movie did inspire a lot of restaurants, ramen shops that would be named Tampopo. There is a Japanese Korean fusion restaurant. I don't know if it's a fusion restaurant, but it has both Japanese and Korean cuisine, and it's in Philadelphia. And when I looked it up, like it has like kind of the same font.
Yeah.
So like you could tell it was inspired by the
yeah.
movie. And I do have a New Jersey connection, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah. Besides Tampopo being in Philadelphia, the restaurant that was inspired by it. So ready? Get connected for free. Free New Jersey connection. Okay. So there was a movie that was called The Ramen Girl. And it was, I think, released in like 2008 or something.
Yes, it was. I was going to talk about it.
Good. You can talk about it later.
No, not a lot. Just I was going to mention it.
I don't know a lot about it. What I do know, though, is that number one, it was heavily inspired by Tampopo. Number two, I think someone in Tampopo was in it.
Yes. Girl. I will double check who it was, but.
And finally, it starred Brittany Murphy. Who grew up in Edison, New Jersey.
Wow. That's actually not that far off of a New Jersey connection.
That's not bad, right?
Yeah.
So you guys just got connected for free with New Jersey Connection. Take that, The Meg. The one movie I could not find.
It was the guy who played Goro.
Oh,
who was the lead character.
There you go.
It was Tsutomu Yamazaki.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's pretty cool, right?
He had a cameo in The Ramen Girl as Grandmaster. Was his character's
name? Oh, neat. So that's basically all I have here.
Brittany Murphy in a ramen movie doesn't seem.
It's
very 2008.
The poster, not great.
When did Aloha come out?
Oh, that was
a little later.
Either. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like an Aloha situation.
I don't think it is.
Okay.
I think she is just trying to discover the art of ramen.
Okay.
I don't think that she's portraying. I don't know. I haven't seen the movie.
Sure. Okay. I don't know either.
I do like Brittany Murphy though.
Yeah.
She was a good actress.
Yeah, she was.
But I didn't know she grew up in Edison. She was born in like Georgia or something, and then she like grew up like when she was older, she was in LA. But yeah, there was a time she grew up in Edison. So I feel like Edison has a lot of people, like famous people that come from that area. Near you, where you grew up.
Who else?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
But there's people.
We'll just stick with that.
Stick with it. Or somebody I mentioned not that long ago, like grew up in that area, like around South Amboy and stuff.
It wasn't like Danny DeVito, was it?
No, he was down the shore.
Yeah, let me check. Edison, New Jersey, famous people. Susan Sarandon.
That was it.
It was Susan Sarandon.
Yep.
There's not a ton. I mean, there's actually a large page here, but not a lot of people that I recognize.
I think I was just thinking of Susan Sarandon because we just covered
Thomas
Rocky
Edison.
Horror. Oh, well, yeah, my guy. Shout out for the light bulbs.
Yes. yes. Yeah. What do you mean?
He did the light bulb.
He did the light bulb, yes. We wouldn't have movies without Thomas Edison.
Okay, but like that's the whole like, oh, he inspired that. I get that, but like
he developed many devices in fields such as electric power generation, mass communication, sound recording, and motion pictures, including the phonograph, the motion picture camera, early versions of the light bulb.
Ah.
Yeah.
Menlo Park, baby.
Yep, that was where his first lab was.
And the mall was one of our first dates.
Yep. There's a food court there.
Yep.
All right. You want to do the plot?
Yeah.
All right. First of all, the tagline is it's called the first Japanese noodle Western.
Well, and they call it a ramen Western instead of a spaghetti Western.
It borrows a lot of traits from like old like American Western movies and spaghetti Westerns in Italy. I actually, part of my deep dive is going to be about how this movie's sort of combination of all the different food cultures in this movie, like the spaghetti scene, like how it sort of mashes together a lot of things, is sort of symbolic of how the Western has been sort of taken and brought into different directions. But it also comes from, the argument is that a lot of the early Westerns come from Akira Kurosawa movies. So it's like it came from Japan, came to America, then went back to Japan. Like, so it's kind of like how food sort of travels over throughout the world. So do the concept of like a Western. So I thought that was pretty interesting. It was by the Criterion people. So I'm gonna talk about that later. Yeah. All right. So the plot summary: a pair of truck drivers, the experienced Goro and a younger colleague named Gun. Gun is the guy that's Ken Watanabe. Stop at a decrepit roadside ramen shop. Outside, Goro rescues a boy who's being beaten by 3 schoolmates. The boy, Tabo, is the son of Tampopo, the widowed owner of the struggling ramen shop Lai Lai. A customer called Piskin harasses Tampopo, demanding that she sells the shop. Goro suggests Piskin be quiet so he can enjoy his meal, then provokes a physical confrontation, which is so Western. You get the mysterious man who walks into the saloon and he gets into a fight with some guy to protect somebody else's honor. Like it's classic Western opening. Goro puts up a good fight, but outnumbered by Piskin and his men, he is knocked out and awakens the next morning in Tampopo's home. The next morning, she kindly cooks Goro and Gun breakfast and sends Tabo off to school. While eating breakfast, Tampopo asks for their opinion of her ramen, and Goro and Gun tell her that the noodles are sincere but lack character. After Goro gives her some advice, she asks him to become her teacher. They decide to turn her establishment into a paragon of the art of noodle soup making. I love that this is the whole concept of the movie.
Yeah.
It's like, we need to make a great ramen shop.
I love it.
She and Goro visit her competitors, and he points out their strengths and weaknesses. She still struggles to fix the broth, so Goro visits one of his friends, who he calls the sensei, who is part of like an unhoused encampment, to enlist the old master and his superlative expertise. When they rescue a wealthy elderly man from choking on his food, the man lends her the services of his chauffeur, Shohei, who has a masterly way with noodles. Through clever trickery, they pry ramen secrets from their competitors, like she's hiding in the back of a store watching the one guy and what his recipe is. Gun and his friends give Tampopo a makeover as a modern proprietress. This is another makeover movie.
Yeah, it was a makeover movie, yes. 2 in a row.
During the transition, the group agrees to change the restaurant's name from Lai Lai to Tampopo. Piskin feels bad for being too drunk to tell his men to stay out of the fight at the beginning of the movie, so he offers Goro another chance one-on-one. After the rematch ends in a draw, Piskin reveals he is a contractor and Tampopo's childhood friend and offers to renovate the shop's interior. Tampopo's latest effort still comes up short, so Piskin teaches her his own secret recipe. If this guy had a secret recipe, why is he holding it out until the end of the movie? When the 5 men consume her latest creation down to the last drop, Tampopo knows she has won. Tabo also triumphs, beating all 3 of his tormentors and subsequently befriending them. As customers fill her newly redecorated shop, the men file out one by one. Throughout the film, there's other scenes of other characters. There's a couple of vignettes. A group of business executives visit a French restaurant and have no idea how to order, and they're upstaged by a surprisingly worldly subordinate when they're all like, oh my God, he knows all that stuff? When they're like, I'll just have a Heineken. A woman's etiquette class on how to eat spaghetti silently in the European manner abruptly changes course on observing a white man slurping his noodles. A supermarket clerk catches an aged woman obsessed with squeezing food. A con man uses an elaborate meal to lure a victim into an investment scam. The victim himself is a thief, but is so taken by the meal that he fails to leave with the con man's wallet before being arrested. A housewife rises from her deathbed to cook one last meal for her family, who mournfully eat to memorialize her. And there were a couple memorable scenes with a guy in a white suit, which we won't get into on this podcast.
Nope.
That's Tampopo.
Yep. Good job.
Yeah. Did I ever send you my questions?
No, but I'll just go off the cuff.
Oh, crap. I told you a couple of them.
Yeah, it's all good. So let me start. So this is Westerns in general. This is a play on a Western.
Yeah.
And I honestly have not seen many Westerns.
Neither have I, to be honest.
Like, that is a movie genre that I'm severely lacking in. Like, severely. Like, I've never seen any of those old school Clint Eastwood movies. Never seen any of the John Wayne movies.
Yeah, I've seen a couple.
Nothing like that. I saw a couple like modern ones over the past few years.
Hell or High Water,
News of the World.
Yeah.
Power of the Dog even.
Yeah.
It's kind of Westerny.
I would count that as a Western,
right?
For sure.
But I haven't really explored that genre very much. I was wondering, is there a movie genre that you want to see more of besides Westerns?
I want to see more like horror movies.
Oh, but we watch a lot of horror movies.
Yeah, but I haven't seen a lot. Like, I like the campy.
Yeah.
Like, we've been watching the classics.
Of course.
And some of them have an element of camp to them. Like, Nightmare on Elm Street has a lot of that. But I feel like there's a lot of horror movies that I haven't really gotten to dig into.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I feel like people like them.
There was a whole back wall of horror movies at TMV Home Video, my local like blockbuster, non-blockbuster, and I was always so scared because I always saw the Pinhead one,
Yeah.
and that scared
Hellraiser.
me. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. And that's the other thing. Like a lot of them had like super like over the top gory posters and like covers on the VHSs, and they would always have like HE double hockey sticks
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
outside,
Yeah.
and I'd be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, oh
Yeah.
my god, I need to get another Mary Kate and Ashley party DVD.
To make up for this.
I mean VHS. Yeah, I think that's horror is a good one.
My other thing is not necessarily a genre, but I want to watch more Studio Ghibli stuff.
That's cool. Yeah.
Which I've only seen Spirited Away, which we covered for this podcast. So I'm excited for his new one, which was supposed to be his last one, but then he was like, nah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Miyazaki stuff I want to get more into.
Cool. I think I want to see. I kind of want to explore, like, touch upon at least a lot of subgenres. Like, I really would like to watch a French New Wave movie.
I think we do a pretty good job of like tapping in here and there to
But there's a lot of things that I'm still missing. So
Yeah.
like maybe a French New Wave, like two of the classics, like the big ones.
Yeah.
Maybe two classic Bollywood movies.
Right.
You know, like trying to go into the and even like different countries and what films are representative of different countries, I think could be good for my education when it comes to film.
Well, I'll tell you, since I started watching stuff that like I've watched, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know that the last year or so I've watched a lot of like old Japanese movies from the 60s, 70s, and I feel like it's helped me look at American movies a lot differently too. Not necessarily in a bad way, not being like, oh my god, these are so much better, because some of them aren't. But it helps you kind of get the context and kind of see where a lot of these, especially if you're watching something like a Nolan or a Scorsese or somebody who is Greta Gerwig, somebody who knows what they're doing and knows movies, you can see where they're drawing their ideas from, and you can be like, hey, that's from Seven Samurai, and it wasn't done as well, or it was done in a really cool way in this new way. It's just sort of, to me, it's added a lot to sort of the things and the way that I look at writing.
Yeah, I like that.
And like a lot of the Italian directors too, like Fellini, Antonioni, like there's a lot of those people too who are so influential to so many of the directors that people love nowadays, that it's almost impossible not to see it once you've seen one of the things that like a Tarantino movie comes from. You're like, oh, he's referencing this movie, like he's referencing Bullet from 1968 or whatever, and it helps you, it gives you a fuller understanding of what the director is trying to do.
Yeah. Well, and that's also why I want to explore like famous directors and like stuff like that. Like we just watched a couple of Altman movies.
Yeah.
Which I always knew that he was this like big director, but I didn't know like his stuff or what his style really was.
Yep.
And it's cool to kind of like be able to.
I loved Nashville.
Oh, Nashville was so good. Just a very different type of movie.
Yep.
And that to me was the movie that made me go, oh, that's that slice of life stuff that I like. Like that's where Linklater gets his style from in some of his movies. And
he's
so
very Altman.
Yeah, so I would really like to just like maybe less genre-y and more subgenre or
more like directors, movements, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, you've seen a couple more Westerns that I have. Do you have a few favorites?
So I'm on my Letterboxd page right now, and I haven't seen a ton, like I said, but the couple that I will give a shout out to are, so The Wild Bunch was Sam Peckinpah, I think is how you say his name. And he's another one who is a direct, like Tarantino gets all of his stuff from Sam Peckinpah. So I had read Tarantino's book, and he talks about The Wild Bunch in it a lot. And so I watched it, and it was one of those movies that came out in 1969. It was supposed to be like, oh my god, this movie's so violent, like you can't take your kids to go see this movie. But like you watch it now, and it's like it's like it's bloody, but it's not. Yeah, it's nowhere near what we've seen since. But in new Hollywood era. Right. I mean, yeah. But the thing that I like about Westerns is that I find the traditional Western to be kind of like meh. Like I watched Stagecoach by John Ford, which is supposed to be like one of the amazing ones. And it had really cool set pieces, like the horse, all the horse stuff and the carriage stuff. But I find them more interesting when they're deconstructing the genre, like in Butch Cassidy.
Yeah, I do love that movie.
And in the other one that I liked was The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which was also John Ford. I think it was one of his last movies. And it starred Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne.
Nice.
And the movie is about, and Lee Marvin, who was like a big like character actor at the time, who was in all these movies. And it's about the end of the West, the Wild West. And so John Wayne is starting to come to terms with the fact that he's sort of becoming irrelevant in society because it's the early 60s. And it's sort of meta because it's like the Western was kind of on its way out when New Hollywood hit in the 60s, when like Easy Rider was like one of the last like big movies you would call a Western. And it just the way that those two play off of each other, because I think that's the only time they were ever in a movie together.
Interesting.
And they're both kind of good guys. Like Lee Marvin's the bad guy, Jimmy Stewart's the good guy, and John Wayne's somewhere in the middle. And you kind of figure out throughout the movie where his intentions lie. Yeah, so I would say that the three that I would mention are The Wild Bunch, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
What about Back to the Future 3?
Haven't seen it.
It is a
That's
Western.
one of the classic Westerns I haven't seen.
It is a Western.
Back to the Future 3.
Cool. And then my last Western-y question is, who would you like to see star in a Western? Is there anyone that kind of gives that vibe? Strong, silent type.
Do you have any?
No, I just came up with the question.
Yeah. It's kind of weird because like I wouldn't have said Benedict Cumberbatch, but I thought he worked pretty well in
Power of the
Power of
Dog.
the Dog. He was definitely, he stuck out like a sore thumb, but
He kind of was supposed to.
The character was supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was an interesting movie, I thought.
Let's see here. It's weird because I feel like a lot of actors nowadays, I don't want to say like nowadays, but I feel like a lot of actors are just kind of themselves. Like if Ryan Gosling's in a movie, it's like he could play a character, but like that's Ryan Gosling.
That's Ken.
You know?
How about Brendan Gleeson?
Yeah, he kind of does play a cowboy in most of his movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's certain guys, there's certain actors who I think can do whatever they want. Like you mentioned Brendan Gleeson, like Colin Farrell, I could see playing a great cowboy.
Yeah, but he's also kind of wild.
Well, yeah.
He'll be a wild cowboy.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no. It's funny because one of the first people who came to mind was Chris Pine, and then I was like, well, he wasn't a cowboy, but Hell or High Water, he was already kind of in.
Yeah.
I feel like there's not that
what about
many.
Michael Shannon?
Yeah.
Your guy.
My guy, Michael Shannon. Willem Dafoe.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. What about like a John David Washington?
Yeah. Who was in?
He could do that.
Who was in? That's another movie I wanted to see.
Why not have him and Adam Driver meet back up after
the Black Klansman?
Yeah.
Remake.
Yeah. Throw in Topher Grace. Why not?
We don't. Well, Topher Grace, as long as he's the bad guy. The Harder They Fall is the movie I was thinking of that came out a few years ago that I wanted to watch, but it's Jonathan Majors
and Regina King's in it.
Idris Elba, Zazie Beetz, Regina King, Delroy Lindo, Lakeith Stanfield, Danielle Deadweiler.
That's a good cast.
Yeah,
Very
starring
good cast.
Jonathan Majors.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. I'm like you. I'm not super into Westerns.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a pick
just
for that.
listed a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, and they would all be great.
All right, my last question here. This is, of course, a Japanese movie we mentioned a couple times. What are some countries whose movies you like the most?
Japan, so far. Japan's the only country that I've really like dug into a little bit.
Yeah.
And I haven't really dug into it. I've seen, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 Japanese movies this year, which is, I mean, a lot.
That is like he's like secretly bragging.
That's a lot for most people.
That's a lot for like anybody.
But most
people haven't seen 25 movies in a year.
Yeah, honestly, that's true. I guess I don't really have. I watch more movies than the average person, so I don't have that sort of context to it. But I like going back and watching the classics because, like I said, it helps me watch newer movies and really appreciate where they're coming from, or not. Honestly, like a lot of movies I watch now, I'm like, this movie's garbage. Like,
yeah.
like, okay, I'm not gonna. I was really excited for Renfield when it
Oh,
first came out.
yeah.
Like not even when it came
Oh,
out.
I forgot we watched that
When exactly
like a week ago.
when I heard about Nicolas Cage being Dracula,
Yeah.
I was like, this movie's gonna be hilarious.
It was alright. I liked it.
The trailer,
I liked it.
The trailer comes out, and I'm like, this looks horrible. Like, I can't watch this. And then we watched it, and it was fine.
It was.
I remember pretty much nothing about it. And Nicolas Cage, he's worth the price of admission. Nicolas Cage is great
Always.
as Dracula. But it's like, from watching so many like movies that are deemed the greatest ever, like sometimes when I sit down and I watch a movie like Renfield, that's both not the greatest ever and not the worst ever, because I will watch the worst ever movies. I love the worst ever movies. But it's like somewhere in the middle, and there's not enough to draw me in, and there's not enough to make me be like, this is hilarious because it's so bad.
Well, it is. You're right. It is hard because we do watch a lot of movies that are Oscar contenders and are
And I love it. I'm glad I do that.
classics and things like that. And so when you watch, I always relegate them to the idea of being a plane movie.
Yeah.
Like if I'm gonna watch it on a plane, like I'm not gonna watch Power of the Dog
Right.
on a plane.
Right.
But I will watch Renfield on a plane.
Right.
You know? So it is kind of tough when like you're like, what should we watch? And then it's a movie that got pretty good reviews
Yeah.
this year and is, people seem to like it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we are ended up being disappointed.
Yeah. That being said, though, I can go back and I watch, like I said, some of these old movies, and there are some, like, for example, Throne of Blood by Kurosawa, which was the first one that I watched. It's like a Macbeth samurai reimagining.
Okay.
I didn't love it. Like, because I've seen so many Macbeth, like, I loved the tragedy of Macbeth.
Yeah, it was really good.
Like, certain stories, if I had seen this movie in the 60s or whenever it came out, I would be like, this is wild. This movie's insane.
Right.
Nobody, it's a Macbeth with freaking, samurais and swords and all that. Like, that's awesome. And it was cool. But I don't know, it didn't quite do it for me. But then I'll watch something like High and Low, which is another Kurosawa movie, and it's like an early like hostage movie. So this guy who's he's like a business owner or something, it's like CEO, and one of his employees who's like his driver or something, son gets kidnapped to get at him. So the whole moral conundrum isn't like, what am I going to do to get my child back? It's what am I going to do to get the child of someone who's a lower class than me, who's my employee, who's not somebody that I necessarily have to go out and risk my neck for. How far do you go in that direction when you're somebody who is so far above that? So it ties in both the human aspect and the class aspect. And I find movies like that to be super interesting. When you have that sort of moral conundrum, even though to most people it probably isn't a conundrum, but it's I just think he's a master at sort of pulling those like little threads out. And so I haven't gone too far into him or Yasujiro Ozu, who's the other like main huge golden age Japanese director. I've watched a few of each of their movies, but Japan's probably the country that I've gotten into the most. Cool. I mean, not count. I'm talking about like foreign language countries. Like I've seen a million English movies, so I wouldn't count England.
Right.
But yeah,
you watch a lot of Ryan Reynolds movies too.
So yeah,
Canada.
Covered. Yeah, my Reynolds head.
We South Korea film has been having
South Korea too.
A little bit of a moment for U.S. audiences.
Yep.
And a lot of that is obviously because of Bong Joon-ho's movies. But we've watched a few other ones from South Korea that are really good. We've also watched a few movies from either China or Hong Kong that
Wong Kar-wai movies.
Yeah. What's the movie that we watched that had that big hospital scene?
Hard Boiled.
That was crazy.
It was like 45 minutes. That's John Woo.
That movie was crazy.
Yeah.
Was that from Hong Kong?
I think he's Hong Kong. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was Tony Leung who was also in. In the Mood for Love.
Yeah.
And Chungking Express.
Yes. Yep. Which we also saw.
Yeah.
Right. Did I see that?
Chungking Express.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one with that played the Mamas and the Papas song a million times.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And the Cranberry song.
Yeah.
Yeah. John Woo is from Hong Kong.
Yeah. We watched what was it? Samurai Soccer.
Shaolin Soccer.
Shaolin Soccer.
Yeah, that one's wild.
That movie was crazy.
That movie's wacky. That's when if you're in like a weird mood, you watch Shaolin Soccer, and you'll have a lot of fun.
I definitely want to see more movies again from India and from France. Those are two countries that I want to see a lot more from.
The French.
Yeah, I want to kind of explore that a little bit. Although every French movie I've seen is like depressing. Well, extremely sad and traumatic.
We should watch a couple Agnes Varda movies. the couple that I've seen, one of them is depressing, but it's told in a way that's not depressing. And the other one is not really depressing.
Okay. So, yeah, I got lots of options there.
Yeah.
That's good. That's all I got for questions.
Okay. What do you think about the way this movie was framed? So the first scene is them in the theater.
Right.
And they're talking about, like, I hate when people... It's the guy in the white suit, the guy from Babel. And he's like a Yakuza guy. And he's like, I hate when people, like, crinkle up the snacks in the theater. And he goes and he, like, beats up a guy who's, like, crinkling the snack. And it's, like, some old guy.
Yeah.
And then he sits down and he's like, we're all going to watch this movie together. And then the movie starts. Do you like stuff like that?
Yeah,
like
sure.
when they break the fourth wall like that?
Yeah, why not?
What I liked about it in this is that it sets up the fact that the movie is not... It's going to be light.
Right.
You know? Like, even when he beats up the guy, like, it's played for... It's not...
Right.
It's not a... The guy doesn't get bloodied and, like, taken out. Like, he's beating him up because he wants him to shut up in the theater. Yeah. Which is a pretty universal thing that people probably want to do sometimes.
Well, something else. When you have a framing device like that, it does make me consider, like, this is a person who is purposefully making a film with ideas.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but, like, there are a lot of movies that come out that aren't going to be doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's clearly someone who is, like, a lot of times it's the people that, like, write their own stuff. Like, when I think about framing devices like that, for some reason, like, Quentin Tarantino movies kind of pop into my head. Like, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Nothing
kind of
worse
vibes.
than the end of Inglourious Bastards.
Right, like, yeah, all that kind of stuff.
When it's Brad Pitt saying, I think this just might be my masterpiece. Right. And then directed by Quentin Tarantino pops up on the screen.
Although I love that movie's excellent.
It's my favorite Tarantino movie.
It's an excellent movie. But that's exactly the same. It's kind of like movies within movies within movies.
Yeah.
And so that's what
that movie had a movie in it too.
It did.
The Nazi propaganda movie.
Right. So Tampopo kind of reminded me of that in a way, which is interesting.
Yeah, and it sort of like went from story to story, like sort of freewheeling.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You had your main narrative, but outside of that, it was all it took me a while to catch on to the fact that, like, we weren't going to see these characters again.
Right.
But then we did see the gangster guy a bunch,
yeah.
so it was like kind of like you never knew what was coming next.
Right. Which, did I love that? Did it enhance my viewing experience of the movie? No, I was always like, all right, let's get back to the Tampopo story.
Well, yeah, I liked some of them. I thought that some of them were really good.
I understand the greater purpose of it, and I wouldn't have wanted it to change because that was the purpose of the director,
right?
And the writer. You know,
the great purpose is to say that, like, how universal food is. People use food in so many different ways, and it affects people. It elicits emotions. One of my notes was, I just wrote, food is used for a lot of different purposes: comedy, drama, like the opening Western standoff. Romance, camaraderie between the Sensei crew when they were all just, laughing it up over how he used to, whatever they said he made. Mm-hmm. Like, he was, like, known for this huge dish. Payne, the guy with the dental issue, who had, like, who he was I forget what he was eating, but they were like, your mouth smells so bad.
Yeah.
And he had
like an abscess.
Yeah, he had like an abscess. Rebellion, when the one kid was standing there and he had a sign on him from his mom that said, don't give him ice cream.
Yeah.
And the guy gives him ice cream.
Yeah.
Even incidental friendship, like the guy who they saved from choking,
right.
who then becomes, like, friends with them. Business and social situations, like the guy who ordered the wrong thing at the business lunch. The guy who was faking being a college professor so he could steal from people. Mm-hmm. It's an entire city and civilization connected by food in every conceivable way, is what I wrote.
Beautiful.
And without the vignettes, I think it's hard to pack all that into the main narrative.
Exactly.
So I appreciate them in that way, although the Tampopo story was obviously my favorite.
Yep. Well, all right, here's a little spin-off question of that.
Okay.
Have you ever had a food experience that has been otherworldly that would be fit in place in this movie?
Not that I can talk about on this podcast.
Oh, God. Okay.
I'm talking about the Skylark.
Oh, well, it's just chaos there.
No. A specific story about the Skylark.
I don't remember.
We'll talk later.
Okay.
No, not off the top of my head, but I will say that one of my favorite things to do is eat food with people.
Yeah, sure.
It's the way that I've made the most connections with people. I had a whole friend group and who were my high school friends, and throughout college and shortly after college, we would hang out when we all still lived in the same town. We would go to Sonic at, like, midnight every night, like, for, like, a whole summer. Mm-hmm. Like, food, they say food brings people together, and it's like a cliche, but it's really not. Like, for me, it's been a huge part of my life. We're going to your parents' house in a couple hours for Sunday dinner that we do every single week.
Yep.
Like, food's the best. And not because of the taste necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, food taste is great, but it's the experience.
Yeah. I think mine is I've had very distinct, memorable experiences around baking when I make food for others.
You don't even need it, really.
Not very much.
People are always surprised by that when I...
Yeah. Because I like to eat, I'll eat a whole bag of Doritos, no problem. Oh, how's that?
People who don't know you.
Yeah, but it's always nice when number one, when I accomplish a major baking project and it's like successful.
Like the Italian 7-layer cookies.
Like, yes, like that took 3 days to make. I made a Russian honey cake that took many hours.
Cake?
Yeah, I've made a wedding cake. I've had lots of different times where I've done things for the first time, like successfully making a lemon curd, successfully baking yeasted things, and it's always very, very exciting when it's like successful. But it's also nice to get compliments, and I get a lot of compliments for my baking, and especially from like people that are like kind of like step away acquaintances.
Yeah.
Like if I bring something to a party and someone who I don't even know finds me to tell me how good something is, that's good right there.
You were talking about me bragging.
I can't help it that I'm that good. But I'm not. Sometimes I have fails too.
It's happened.
Remember
the cake pops?
Those are pretty bad.
All right. What was the best looking food in the movie?
I mean the noodles, the ramen noodles.
Well, I know that Erin's also a vegetarian if you don't know.
So there were certain things that
they're like cutting the heads off of stuff, and
I personally when it comes to food, I struggle with that a little bit, but I do understand the cultural significance to it, and so I'm not
part of that too.
I'm not going to say that people shouldn't be doing.
Well, no, part of that too was that Tampopo was cringing and looking away too. So like part of it is that they were going that extra step to show her what she needed to do to be successful.
Right. Totally.
So they're pushing the boundary there on purpose.
Yeah, definitely. That ice cream looked good too.
Yeah. I would say outside of the ramen, which I literally turned to, I was like, I want ramen so bad right now.
Looked good. I have noodles.
I have a favorite ramen shop in a town I used to work in that I haven't been to in a while.
But they have one nearby us. So.
They do. And maybe want to go there. But what I will say is the food that I actually thought looked the best was in the scene when the mom like woke up from her deathbed and made the food. It was like some kind of fried rice and there was like egg in it and everything. That looked to me like the best food in the movie.
Yeah, that was a sad scene.
Yeah, it was. But again, that's one of the things that it touched on. Touched on how the dad was like, no, you have to finish this meal because it's the last meal your mom made. And it's like, that's sad, but also it like means so much to people. Food means so much to people. What do you think is the trait that makes Tampopo successful in this movie? The character successful?
I think that it's her can-do spirit and her ability to move past criticism, whether constructive or not. So she's able to kind of take what people are saying about her food and continue to change it and be open to that, be open-minded about changing things. And I think that, and do it with a smile too, which I'm not saying you have to smile, but like she does. She does it in a way where it's like she's taking this opportunity to learn in order to get better.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that.
Well, what I wrote too was listening and learning. All the other chefs we meet in the movie are convinced their way is the best.
Yeah.
And, we don't really get to see how successful she is in the long run, but
looks pretty good,
good
by
start.
the end. I also loved the outside of the restaurant, how they made it look. The inside is a little 80s because it was made in 1985. So like modern and cool in the 80s is,
You mean at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I liked the original look of the shop. They made it seem like, oh, it's like yucky. It wasn't yucky. But the outside with the little awning. Yeah. So beautiful.
Yeah. I liked in this movie that she took a little sprinkle from everybody.
Yeah.
Like
that's nice too. The power of collaboration is nice.
Sometimes
even if it was a unintentional collaboration, like they stole from people.
Sometimes you can literally get too many cooks in the kitchen and have it turn out to be bad. So I think that the other thing is discerning what the good advice was and the bad advice was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would have loved to eat at her ramen shop.
Yeah.
Okay. What if you had a restaurant
Yeah.
What food would it serve, and what would it be called?
I would do a bakery called April's Bakes.
April's.
It just or maybe just April's.
April's.
I think just April's. I also I like two different ideas. Number one, I like a pastry focused or like baking focused breakfast shop that would also do coffees and like whatever. I also like a dessert restaurant where it's like the place we went to in Little Italy where you go
I
and
forget what it's called.
you sit down and it's like you get a waiter and you get a
Ferraris.
menu and you get desserts and it's a real whole thing. I like that. I like the idea of making the sweet part, even though again, I don't really eat sweets that much, although sometimes I do. Like making that a main event, I think is a really cool idea. And I would call it April's.
Okay.
What about you?
I would like a sub shop.
I like that idea.
I would like a sub shop, like a seated rolls we're talking. But we're talking like hot and cold. We're talking like you can get like some kind of like chicken parm if you want.
Yeah.
You could get some kind of I'm thinking of the place from my hometown also. I wouldn't go that crazy because they have like all this crazy stuff, but I'm talking like simple, like good ingredients, and we're gonna call it Tommy's Tubers.
Ew. I don't like. We'll work on the
What's
name.
a T word for sandwiches?
I don't know.
I don't
have to
know.
think about it.
Tommy's Tubers.
So why don't you call it Tommy's Lunchbox?
Tommy's Lunchbox.
Kind of like that.
Yeah. And then I have the special. The one special is Tommy's Pickles. It comes with pickles on it.
There's a place in Collingswood that's called Maria's Bread Sandwiches. And I like the way that sounds. Bread sandwiches. Like I like the old school names.
Yeah.
Like if I was doing an ice cream, it would be April's Icebox.
April's Icebox.
April's Icebox.
She keeps opening her eyes every time we say her name.
You know, I like that kind of thing. Like like if you called a bake shop instead of a bakery, like that's sweet. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tommy's Sandwiches.
I feel like it's not catchy enough. We'll have to workshop the name. If you have a better name for us,
I like Tommy's Lunchbox.
Tommy's Lunchbox. If you have a better name than that, please let us know. We're gonna crowdsource this one now. Yeah, and if you want to come to my sub shop, let me know.
And there has to be a vegetarian section.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, another thing is like I've talked to people outside of the state, and like nobody knows what pork roll is.
Yeah,
Taylor ham.
I mean, or they've heard of it because of New Jersey, the whole thing.
Right, but I feel like I'm surprised that like you could get good pizza in Kansas, maybe.
In theory.
Like not as good as here, but like you could get.
You're not getting a good seated roll anywhere outside.
Or a bagel. I feel
You're not like so a sandwich, like a seated roll.
Yeah.
That's like a good sandwich hoagie roll. You're not getting outside of this area.
I'm thinking
in the US.
I'm thinking like pork roll to me seems like a thing that should have caught on like wildfire and never did. It's not something that's dependent on like the water, as they say. Like that's why New York pizza is so good. It's because of the water. Like I feel like pork roll should be a bigger thing.
Maybe that's
it's my favorite breakfast meat.
Maybe it's because it's the New Jersey, New Jersey vibe that the pigs have.
Maybe it's those New Jersey pigs.
Maybe.
All right.
Well, that's why you would have thought that Boost would have caught fire too.
No.
Boost slushy is sold out across the nation.
I wrote, when they're training the other guy to work at the ramen shop, it's like Bar Rescue when they set up the fake customers and in the car Taffer screaming about how awful the place is.
Yes, exactly.
Because they were all looking at each other. They were like, oh, this guy's he's not going to cut it. I also said that the guys that were with the gourmet sensei reminded us of when like an outsider talks to us about movies. Like people, not an outsider in terms of people who only don't watch the same movies that we do, but people who don't talk about movies with us. Like we're talking.
We gotta leave now. Bye.
Yeah, I wrote that they were just tossing information about the drought of 1980 in Bordeaux, and they were like going back and forth about it. And Tampopo and her son, and they were just like, "What is going on here?"
Well, yeah, like think about it. If like we're just talking about the like best picture nominees from 2013 and why this like
To Leslie we dropped last week.
Yeah, like nobody cares about To Leslie.
No.
Well, I do. I deeply care about To Leslie.
This one's to you, Leslie.
And it's such a funny name for a movie. And Mark Maron's in it. What's not to like about Mark Maron? And also the campaign, how it was like, are they like illegally
Yeah.
getting Andrea Riseborough? Like,
Yes.
I love that
This is
stuff.
brilliant stuff.
I
And we're doing it
live
again.
for
We're
that
doing
stuff.
exactly what I
Oh yeah, sorry. She ended up with a little diner at the end.
She did.
We could have done that movie for comfort food, although that is a very sad movie to do.
Not
for
very
comfort
comfortable.
Food. No.
This was more comfortable, this movie.
Yeah, it was nice.
The other thing that we didn't mention was that it also sort of lampooned sports movies. There was the Rocky scene when she's running down the beach with when he's on the bike next to her.
It satirized a lot of American movies,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah. What else we got? Well, the thing with the spaghetti scene I wanted to talk about too. So as I mentioned, it's like an etiquette class for the Japanese women, and like they're trying not to slurp the spaghetti.
Yeah, because
in Japan,
it's seen as a compliment,
a sign of appreciation
if you're slurping noodles, and in fancy America,
yeah,
it's seen as rude if you're slurping.
And then the guy downstairs was just slurping. He doesn't care.
You gotta live your best life. Do what you want.
Exactly. And I agree. I think that's a good message to take from that. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Like, yeah. So all right. So I didn't.
It doesn't matter. Do you know how much that kind of stuff doesn't matter? When we went to Heirloom Kitchen, which is a nice, beautiful restaurant with it is on the casual side as far as fine dining goes.
Yeah.
But it's a tasting menu. It's fancy. It's more money than we spend usually in 3 dinners out. And
3 Chipotles.
Yeah. And at the end of the meal, I walked over to the lady who was the coat check, and I was whispered to her, I'm like, I don't know if I pay you or not.
Like for the coat.
And she was so nice and laughed, and it like made her feel happy for a second that this idiot had no idea what she was doing. So nobody cares.
Nah.
Nobody cares.
As Erin mentioned, there's not a whole lot out there about this movie.
No.
From information sources. So I have Tom's top 2 trivia.
Yay.
One of them is that slurping noodles is considered polite in Japan, and it's a way for the customer to show their appreciation for the cook. And number 2, the old name of Tampopo's restaurant when she first meets Goro and Gun is Lai Lai Ken. Years later, when the first authentic ramen shop opened in New York City, that was what it was named.
So nice.
Yeah, took its name from that scene. So that was a quick trivia section. What else we got? Roger Ebert review. Ebert reviewed it. You better believe it. Ebert knew where his head was at. 4 stars out of 4.
Good job,
Thumbs
Raj.
up. He wrote, Tampopo is one of those utterly original movies that seems to exist in no known category. Like the French comedies of Jacques Tati, which is like, thank you, Ebert. It's a bemused meditation on human nature in which one humorous situation flows into another offhandedly as if life were a series of smiles. Humorous, I think, is the perfect word for this movie.
It is.
It's not like laugh out loud funny.
But it's humorous.
It's humorous, for sure. Mm-hmm. Humor, it is said, is universal. Most times it is not. The humor that travels best, I sometimes think, is not universal humor at all, but humor that grows so specifically out of one culture that it reaches other cultures almost by seeming to ignore them. The best British comedies were the very specifically British films. The best he names a couple that I've never heard of. The best Italian comedies were such local products as Seduced and Abandoned, which I guess is an Italian comedy. The funniest French films were by Tati, who seemed totally absorbed in himself. And this very, very Japanese movie, which seems to make no effort to communicate to other cultures, is universally funny almost for that reason. Who cannot identify with the search for the perfect noodle? Certainly any American can in the land of sweet corn festivals, bake-offs, and contests for the world's best chili. This is a very funny movie.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a very light review. Light as in light tone-wise. He had a lot more than that. He had a lot to say about this movie.
Good.
What else we got? My deep dive. Okay, so it's from an essay an essay written on Criterion.com when Tampopo was introduced into the Criterion Collection in 2017. And it's called Tampopo Ramen for the People. And I'm just going to read a couple of little bits of it. It's about where the Western came from and like how this pulled from the Western. So the writer is Willie Blackmore, and he writes, although no tumbleweeds roll across the screen in Tampopo, Juzo Itami's 1985 Ramen Western, the film is steeped in other tropes of the genre. In its opening, we see the cowboy hat-wearing Goro and his sidekick Gun, each with a neckerchief at his throat, ride into town in the cab of a tanker truck and seek out the best bar to sidle up for a perfect bowl of ramen. In fact, the film itself is kind of a tumbleweed. It is a product of cultural cross-pollination, borrowing from American movie-making conventions to explore a uniquely Japanese obsession. Along the way, it crafts a populist utopian vision, not just of food culture, but of society as a whole. It is... In the U.S. today, as has long been the case in Japan, the dish symbolizes a culinary ideal put forward in Tampopo, that tasteful, informed appetites should belong to the many, not just the wealthy few. Then it talks about how, in the vignettes, the place that ramen occupies in food culture is not unlike that of genre films, including westerns and cinema. It is made for mass consumption and widely available, but it can transcend its popularity to become high art. As many throwaway flicks about shootouts at high noon as there are also the films of John Ford, who, by the way, as a first-generation Irish-American born in Maine, was a tumbleweed in his own right. As many trash bowls of melted salt lick water capped with a quarter-inch of pork fat as you may be served, there's also the kind of noodle soup Tampopo aspires to. Tonkatsu broth that tastes clean and rich after 60 hours of simmering, with noodles so springy they almost seem alive. In a way, Westerns are American in the least nationalistic sense. Immigrants from diverse backgrounds made them into a financially and artistically successful enterprise, and the stories themselves were sometimes borrowed, if not stolen outright, from other cultures. Long before Itami created Goro in the image of John Wayne, John Sturgis traded katanas for revolvers when he made Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai as the Magnificent Seven. Mm-hmm. And after seeing A Fistful of Dollars, Sergio Leone's classic spaghetti western, Kurosawa wrote the Italian director to say, "It's a very fine film, but it is my film."
That's great.
His production company sued Leone for ripping off of Kurosawa's Yojimbo, sometimes shot for shot. When you consider the number of famous cowboys who were first famous Ronin and the very tumbleweed nature of the Western genre itself, it's not difficult to understand the appeal Tampopo had for a U.S. viewer like Roger Ebert, however exotic he found it at the time. Yeah, that's it. And then he talks about sort of the appearance on every taco truck in every corner in the U.S. would be kind of what happened with ramen in Japan. Mm-hmm. It's a really nice article. It's long. I'm obviously not going to go through the whole thing, but yeah, it's just about how this movie kind of helped turn ramen into a everyman meal and sort of give it new life and bring it up to that next level.
Great.
Yeah, I love ramen. I've only had like a couple of like legit like non
top ramen.
Yeah. But every time I have it, I'm like, this is great, and I want more.
Nice.
Yeah. So
Tampopo.
That was Tampopo. Does Tampopo make Baby's First Watch List?
Yeah. Not right away, though.
Not right away.
There's a couple scenes in there.
Yeah. With a fast forward button. Yeah. Do you have any takeaways?
Well, I think that we could bring it back to...
We kind of covered some of them,
to Tampopo herself, right? When you're faced with adversity and criticism, there's many different ways that you can handle it. You could handle it like me and just cry. Or you could be like Tampopo and take that as an opportunity to grow and learn. Keep your eyes and ears open and take what works, throw out what doesn't. And if you want, you could even do it with a little bit of a positive attitude.
I totally agree. And the other thing that I would say as a takeaway that I think our generation has done a lot better than the generation before us is to be open to new types of food, be open to new types of experiences, and
new types of movies too.
New types of movies.
Yeah. Even though this is from 1985.
Yeah. Well, it's a new type of movie for
us.
I mean, even like I said, even though I've seen a lot of Japanese movies at this point, this is a different one.
Right.
I've never seen a movie like this before. I haven't delved much into Japanese comedies, for example. Mm-hmm. So there's always another new thing for you to find somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was Tampopo, and I don't think I missed anything.
No. I think it's good.
No. Next week, our third movie of Comfort Foods Month is also for Erin's birthday, which is coming soon, is The Parent Trap.
Yay.
We've been on a Lohan kick the last month.
This is our last big Lohan.
Yeah, until we get to Machete.
Yeah. But Machete, or is it Machete 2?
I think she's in the first one.
In the first one. Which we watched together.
We did.
So Parent Trap is a classic, a new classic.
Is that true?
To me.
Okay.
It's from 1998. It's old.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the classic part.
Of course it's a classic.
Okay.
Is it Nora Ephron? I think it's Nora Ephron.
I think you might be right.
Yeah, that's a classic. And It's a little bit long, which is kind of wild, but it's really
128 minutes.
too long.
No,
But
it's Nancy Myers.
Oh, Nancy Myers. That's it. Nancy
Which
Myers.
still, she's good
yeah,
too.
she's great.
It's Dean Cundy, our favorite cinematographer.
That's right. And it's Cundy heads over here as always.
Yes, we are the foremost Dean Cundy podcast, I would say.
And it's an excellent kind of Lindsay Lohan primer, almost. Even though you don't need that. 'Cause
Don't
you've
need the
seen a lot of her
primer. I've
movies.
seen most of her big movies.
This might be her best movie.
She has another movie coming out. Did you see? It's it comes out. It's like part of her Netflix deal. So
I'll watch it.
I don't know what it's gonna look like, but let's see here. I'm on her Wikipedia page. It's called Irish Wish.
Oh, I'm in.
When the love of her life gets engaged to her best friend, Maddie puts her feelings aside to be a bridesmaid at their wedding in Ireland. Days before the pair are set to marry, Maddie makes a spontaneous wish for true love, only to wake up as the bride-to-be. With her dreams seeming to come true, Maddie soon realizes that her real soulmate is someone else entirely.
All right, we're watching it. We're doing it when it comes out. When's it coming out?
In 2024.
All right, we're doing it. Just like we did Falling for Christmas.
Yep.
Yep.
The love interest is Ed Spielers from Aragon.
Okay.
He was in Downton Abbey and Outlander.
Oh, okay. All right. So
and the 4th season of You.
All right. So
he's around. He's around. It's not the
he's
guy
from Aragon, and then that's it. Yeah. So Parent Trap, I'm really excited for you to see. It's got Queen Natasha Richardson.
Okay.
It's got Lisa Ann Waters from Abbott Elementary.
Oh, okay.
Dennis Quaid. It is a wonderful movie. I think you're gonna love it.
I actually do think I'm gonna like it. I was just
think
kidding.
you're gonna
about the
love
length.
it.
128 minutes is long, but
it's long, but honestly, and it does feel long.
This movie was a little long too.
Yeah, this
with
movie
the
was a
vignettes.
little long too. I agree. So, yeah, it's not like we're watching Oppie again,
Yeah, or Killers of the Flower Moon,
which we have not seen yet.
or Avatar: The Way of Water, which is the only Best Picture nominee since 2010 we haven't seen.
We're gonna have to watch it.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Yeah, so that was Tampopo, and join us next week again for the Parent Trap. I'm sure more people will listen to the Parent Trap episode than this one, but
they shouldn't.
If you got here, spread the word.
Yeah.
All right, see you guys later.
Bye.